my FPL Game Week 17 transfer targets. In today's video, we're going to have a look at some of the best players to buy. Now, we've got a lot of uncertainty. Is Matheus Cunha going to get a ban? Which forward should you be looking to buy? Should you be buying a cheap midfielder? Is it Ahmad? Is it Rodgers? Is it Enzo? It feels like it changes every single week at the moment. So in today's video, we're going to have a look at some of the best players to buy and discuss a few players you might be considering selling as well. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here. And before we dive in, a little bit of an apology. This video is being recorded in a hotel room. I'm moving around all over the place over Christmas. The videos will be out. I apologize if the visuals or the audio on myself look any different or sound slightly different. I will do my best. Before we dive in, this video is being powered by Fantasy Football Scout if you want to check it out. Over the Christmas period, with so many game weeks coming thick and fast, you can really get your money's worth with their members area. Check out the stats, check out the player comparisons, read articles, all you want over the festive period and get the most out of it. Check out with the link in the description. We're going to start off by discussing some of the players you are considering selling this week. The first one is Bruno Fernandes. Now, these more expensive midfielders are always going to be on this list. He got another return with a penalty, though, in the Manchester derby, and not that much from open play, but still he's getting returns for you. Again, he's not a priority sell. Do I think he's quite worth the money that he is at the moment? Probably not. But again, if you're not going to be investing it really well and you're looking at a Trent Alexander-Arnold, for example, or a Virgil van Dijk in defence, who are not performing particularly well and have Spurs away this week, then it's probably not worth selling him. Again, I don't think he's massively worth the money, but I don't think this is really the week to go and do it, particularly with their fixtures they've got coming up. Now we move on and we talk about Bukayo Saka, and for me, he is a season-long hold, but I can understand with a couple of blanks over the past couple of weeks, with some of you putting the county armband on him in game week 15 as well, previously against Fulham, I can understand why you might be looking at selling him potentially to someone like a Bruno Fernandes to free up a bit of money. However, he did score twice in the Champions League midweek, so the goals are definitely there. Arsenal not quite as free-flowing in the Premier League in terms of goal scoring as maybe we'd want them to be, but I still think with the fixtures they've got coming up, he is a definite hold and still a buy and one of the best players in the game alongside Palmer and Salah in your midfield. Then we go into the double up on Wolves. To start off with Matheus Cunha, he has officially been charged by the FA for what we saw after the game against Ipswich last weekend, but that doesn't mean he's officially going to miss the game against Leicester in game week 17. He has until Thursday to appeal the ban, and if he doesn't appeal the ban, then yes, he's likely to miss that game. From the sounds of it, it does sound like Wolves are going to do their best to appeal that ban and push back the potential date that he starts his suspension. And the reason for it is because the game this weekend up against Leicester is such a massive, massive fixture. They'll probably likely take the risk that he misses an extra game or two if they are unsuccessful with the appeal on the ban and have him available for Leicester. Now, we should hear before the deadline whether he's going to be available or not. If they appeal it by Thursday, then yes, he's likely to miss that game if they don't appeal it. If they do appeal it, the chances are he will be available. So keep an eye out for it. If he is banned, of course, then yes, he's a sell, and we'll talk about some replacements in a moment. If they do appeal it, then he might be available and you can keep him for one more week. Next up is his teammate Ait-Nouri of Wolves. He did pick up a red card after full time, so yes, he is a sell. When he does return from his suspension, he'll also still be on that 4 yellow card tightrope, which he has going into the final few games before game week 19 when it does reset. So yes, I'd be looking to sell Ait-Nouri. And then finally, we've got Bryan Mbeumo, and he's had a couple of difficult games. Of course, scored on the counter-attack against Chelsea in game week 16. Do I think he's a sell? Probably not. He does have a couple of good games, including Nottingham Forest at home this week. Again, if you want to free up money, for example, let's say Cunha gets banned and your only way of getting Cunha up to Alexander Isak, for example, is selling Bryan Mbeumo, then yes, I probably would look at doing something like that, just because the Brentford fixtures going forward are not perfect. But I don't think he's a priority this week, particularly with the fixtures that a few of the others have, the fixtures that he has, and maybe not needing the money for a Liverpool defender quite at this moment. So we're going to start off by discussing a few defenders. As the cheapest defenders, actually, Anderson of Fulham would be my number one pick, but we really don't know at the moment if he is going to be available for selection or not. And Marco Silva tends to be pretty cautious with injuries, and Diop has been playing pretty well. So the likelihood of him starting at home to Southampton does feel like it's dropping, and we don't even know if he's fully back in training yet. If we do get to the deadline and he does look like he's available, then yes, I do think Anderson is a great pick, but right now I can't go recommending him. If you do need a cheap midfielder for this week, Martinez at Manchester United could actually be the one to go with. He does look pretty nailed. He's only 4.4. I wouldn't expect loads, but he does look like with the fixtures coming up for about the next 10 weeks that Manchester United do have, there are worse players you could consider buying. At a few other options at a cheaper price, which don't have great fixtures this week, you've got Howson of Bournemouth, almost kept a clean sheet on Monday night, but didn't. His goal threat is not bad from corners, being 6'4", and we've already seen him score in his recent starts for Bournemouth as well. But he does go away to Manchester United this weekend, but does have Palace at home next weekend. Then going to Crystal Palace, we've gone with Trevor Chalobah, who's 4.4. He did score in game week 16. They do have some nice fixtures coming up, although it is Arsenal at home this week. They look much improved defensively with Gueye, Lacroix and Chalobah as their three centre-backs. And then, of course, the rest of the team clicking quite well at the moment. 4.4, but probably not one you want to be starting this week. Into the slightly more expensive ones, Anthony Robinson of Fulham is definitely the number one pick. They have Southampton at home this week, which is a great entry point. Southampton might be with a slight new manager bounce, but we don't even know who their new manager is going to be. It doesn't look like he's really going to be in place to do anything by that next weekend's fixture. So Fulham should be in for a good result there. Next up is going to be Lewis Hall. He's gone up though in price a few times. He's up to 4.6 million now, but Ipswich away this week is still not a bad fixture. Before this fixture, he didn't get that many returns. It is the big Hall that is making a lot of you look at him, but I don't mind that as a potential buy. And as I've said, if you want to buy Lewis Hall, he's a good buy as long as you can rotate them, because the fixtures coming up are not perfect from a defensive point of view. But again, he's only 4.6 and could be a nice cheap option. If you need a defender who you do want to play every single week, that is probably still Levi Colwill if you can't get up to a 4.8 million for Anthony Robinson anymore. The Chelsea fixtures going up look pretty good. We're starting to get a little bit more assured defensively from them. Again, they're not perfect. They do leak the odd silly goal at the end of games, as we saw in that fixture against Brentford, but with a nice run of fixtures over about the next 7 or 8 game weeks or so, you can't go too far wrong with someone like Levi Colwill. Now, in this bracket, there are a couple of players who I do really like who are currently suspended. This is Munoz of Crystal Palace, again with the fixtures that Chalobah has, and then you can go and get Cucurella of Chelsea with the fixtures that Levi Colwill does have. If both of those were available, they would probably be number 2 and number 3 in my list at the moment, probably behind Anthony Robinson. Munoz at Crystal Palace has looked so good since he's been in that wing-back role, and he's starting to find a bit more form again. And Cucurella going forward, of course, scored and has had a couple of assists recently as well, but both are suspended. Then we move into the more expensive ones. The Arsenal defence is number 1. It is the best defence in the league. Gabriel is back. He should be number 1. If you want to double up with either David Raya, Saliba, or Julian Timber, I would like that as well. Timber would be my pick over Saliba if you had to pick one, just because of the money you can save. I still like the Liverpool defence. Although they have Spurs away this week, they do have a nice run of fixtures from game week 18 onwards, including a great entry point of Leicester at home in game week 18. So that's when I'd look to buy. But if you're wanting to buy a defender this week and you have money for Trent over Virgil van Dijk, I still would be looking to buy. A few questions on Andy Robertson as well. Yes, he did pick up a red in the fixture last week, but it does sound like he'll serve his suspension in the cup game this midweek. Number 3 is actually going to be Gvardiol of Manchester City. Now, not the great fixture this week away at Aston Villa, but they do have some nice fixtures from game week 18 onwards. And his form in front of goal continues to be really good. That's 4 goals for him so far this season, so I can't put you off that. But I just think Liverpool and Arsenal are going to be more reliable. Moving into midfielders now, there are quite a lot of cheap midfielders that you could potentially look at. So we've got probably my 7 favourite here. We've gone with Murphy of Newcastle, we've got Enzo, we've got Rodgers, we've got Kluivert, we've got Ahmad, we've got Iwobi, and we've got the new man Sarr of Crystal Palace. Now, when you start to have a look at these in terms of underlying data, Ismaila Sarr actually has a fantastic output per 90 and is starting to get a lot of minutes at the moment. Kluivert's second best for output per 90, but along with Murphy, who's also up there, their actual minutes are not that great compared to some of the others on this list, which is why their data is slightly inflated. In terms of the actual output we've seen so far this season, Ahmad and Iwobi have been absolutely fantastic. The best 2 that we've got here. Kluivert's not bad because he is the one on penalties and you always have that reliable route. In terms of fixtures we know Ahmad has a nice run. We know Enzo has a nice run. I think Sarr is going a little bit under the radar because they do play Arsenal this week. There are a lot of options that you can pick from here though. The issue with me for Murphy and Kluivert, although some of their online data does look really nice, is the amount of minutes they play. And over Christmas, are they likely to play every single game? They're probably the least likely out of all the players that we've got on the list. In terms of most likely to play, you've probably got the likes of Iwobi and the likes of Enzo Fernandez. Most likely, Ahmad and Sarr coming in next, and then Murphy and Kluivert probably the least likely. And maybe Morgan Rodgers is pretty certain from what we've seen in Aston Villa's fixtures so far this season. If you look at the upcoming fixtures again, we know that Fulham have a really nice run, starting with Southampton at home, and Enzo Fernandez also right up there with their fixtures they've got coming up as well. If I had to narrow it down to the ones that I'd probably look at, I'm not sure that Jacob Murphy and Kluivert are reliable enough for minutes over the Christmas period. Enzo Fernandez is. I'm not that certain on Morgan Rodgers, just because at the moment, I know I bought him a few weeks ago. He's absolutely fine if you do own him, but I'm not certain he's one I'd buy new, just because I'm thinking that Aston Villa are not quite ticking as I'd want them to going forward at the moment. Iwobi, Sarr, Ahmad, and Enzo are probably my top four. Iwobi and Sarr I do think are the best, but they are slightly more expensive than the others we've got on here. So Enzo and Ahmad are my favourite of the cheaper ones. And if I had to buy new now, I know it's recency bias a little bit, but Ahmad has looked fantastic and feels like such a big cog in the Manchester United machine at the moment. So Ahmad is probably number one. Then we've got Enzo. Then you've got Sarr and Iwobi, who are just slightly more expensive. And finally, we move up front, and it might depend if we get a ban for Mateus Cunha or not as to whether you actually need one of these. Isak, Jackson, Chris Wood, Evan Nilsson, João Pedro, and now Raul Jimenez are probably the top ones that you're looking to buy this week. Alexander Isak and Jackson remain the top two to buy, but they are more expensive than the rest, so you might not be able to afford all of them. Evan Nilsson is being slightly underwhelming in terms of actual output, although Bournemouth have been pretty good recently and good going forward. I'm not quite sure he'd be one I'd be looking to buy new. João Pedro and Brighton also continue to underperform and underwhelm at the moment as well. If you own him like me, he's absolutely a hold, and I probably would be looking to buy him at a cheap price, but I can understand if you don't own him, why you might be looking at someone like Raul Jimenez. Raul Jimenez is just 5.5 million, and as we've spoken about with both Robinson and then having a look at Iwobi in midfield, the Fulham fixtures look really nice. There was going to be a big buy in Fulham this week. My only concern with Jimenez is over the Christmas period, we have seen when they play a lot of games, Muniz is likely to get a start. That is the biggest put off for me for Raul Jimenez. If you can afford it and have the risk that he doesn't start every game, Raul Jimenez is great value. But outside of that, the other five on this list are probably likely to play more minutes than Jimenez over this Christmas period. So for me, Isak and Jackson are up there. If you want to hold Cunha because he doesn't get a ban this week, he is also a fine hold. Chris Wood and João Pedro remain probably 3 and 4 for me. Raul Jimenez is great when they play once a week, but over Christmas, I'm a little bit put off. And so just to wrap up with a few other players to buy, if you are looking in goal, I do like David Raya and Alisson still as the best two to buy. David Raya is the most popular goalkeeper, and if you need a cheaper option, Henderson of Crystal Palace with the corner they're turning. As we spoke about with Trevor Chalobah and with Munoz earlier on in the video, I do like what Crystal Palace could offer. The only other forward that I didn't really mention is Visa of Brentford. Again, just with the likes of Selling, Bryan and Burmo, I don't love the fixtures that they've got coming up enough, and they do have quite a few other options in that forward line. He's not a bad option at all and does continue to tick along, but if I don't own him now, I'd probably looking to be buying someone with a better fixture run. Then you're having a look at those slightly more expensive midfielders. You've got Diogo Jota coming back for Liverpool, and he's going to be a big prospect. However, we've heard from Arne Slot say he's unlikely to be starting many games over the Christmas period. So if you are looking to buy a Liverpool player, I do still think I'd stick to the more nailed players in the likes of Trent, in the likes of Virgil van Dijk and Mo Salah, and not really try and push the boat out with someone like Jota until we get more certainty on his minutes. Matoma and, as I said with João Pedro, Brighton are not really clicking at the moment, so he's not one to be buying new. If you're looking at that price, someone like a James Maddison or a Kulusevski could be a little bit better, but again, I'd be looking to go down to a lot of those cheaper midfielders in the likes of Sarr, in the likes of Iwobi, over buying many of these mid-price midfielders at the moment. And then, of course, Spurs. Yes, they've just beaten a Southampton team 5-0, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do it every week. Southampton have been pretty awful defensively this season. I'm not sure I'd let that one result be enough to go and buy them. If you didn't own them before the game, I don't think that game should be enough to let you go and recommend buying them. So in terms of midfielders, yes, if you've got Mbeumo or Fernandes, I would hold them. If you're looking to sell, it's probably because you need the money, and then you go all the way down to one of those cheaper midfielders that we've already spoken about. So that is all for this transfer targets video. If you have enjoyed, please do leave a like on the video, subscribe if you are new around here. Thank you all for your support. Drop any questions you have about players to buy in the comment section down below as well, and I'll be back again very soon.